I recently attended Automation Fair, Rockwell Automation's annual event. It was my 29th visit to that event, and changes over the years have been nothing short of amazing. I'll talk a little bit about organizational structures and the market, bringing in software-defined automation, and some thoughts on that, and standardization, and a little bit of AI talk along the way, because no talk these days can go on without some mention of AI, or I'd be kicked out of the fraternity, if you will. This is Gary Minchell. This is another of my infrequent podcasts, also streaming on YouTube, which now is getting more downloads than the podcast, which is another market trend. In today's podcast, as always, is brought to you by my longtime sponsor, Inductive Automation. They're the makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data, systems, and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, and centralized control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global search and deep link launching, providing additional support for Git, containers, private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing. Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. Download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com. And I should say later on I'll probably mention Inductive Automation, and they've sponsored me for years. Greatly appreciate their support over all this time. And but they make a pretty good product, in my professional opinion, regardless of the sponsorship. So if I bring things up, they don't tell me what to say, and they just trust that I will be trustworthy. So anyway, Automation Fair, and the control market kind of overall. And I'm going to really kind of digress initially. I listen to Apple podcasts a lot about the Apple Computer Company, and listening to Accidental Tech podcast and John Gruber's The Talk Show. They were doing a lot of talk about the shuffling of executives going on with Apple right now, and certain people leaving, certain people retiring, a lot of stuff going on, and people worry about what's happening with companies when they shuffle executives. And something I've been fascinated with since Blake Moret took over as CEO. He tried a lot of things, and I give him a lot of credit for trying stuff. Rockwell has always been pretty much an inbred company where you really needed to, as an executive, you needed to come up through the ranks, and go through different roles in order to one, know people, know the systems and everything, and know the company's history and products and so on. And he brought in some interesting outside people at the senior executive level, and one was a software person. And Rockwell's relationship with software over the 30 years that I've really been more knowledgeable about them has been tenuous at best. They have to have software for various things. There's got to be software inside a lot of the products. There's software to program. Well, there's embedded software in their controllers and software to program those controllers. And then they added in some software that they really needed to be competitive for visualization and certain database stuff. I remember some of the stuff I sold when I actually sold their products in the 90s, or tried to. And I came from a bit of a software background, which was unusual for a Rockwell distributor or salesperson, I think. So it was interesting, and I became an editor, and so I'd interview Keith Nosbush, the CEO before Blake, and ask about software, because they acquired an MES provider, and they acquired some other software. And he told me one time, he says, Gary, it's an experiment, and they've tried software, and they brought in, and so then Blake did a couple of moves. He did a partnership, and a partnership with PTC for ThingWorks and Kepware, and then an investment in PTC. But PTC is primarily PLM, on the PLM side of things. So this was an interesting experiment, and a senior vice president came in with a software background, and they tried some software, and for various reasons, the thing with ThingWorks didn't work out, and eventually, after not too many years, Rockwell divested their investment in PTC. And somebody told me, I'm not a financial analyst. I read financial stuff, but I don't want to be in that ball game. But somebody told me, don't worry about Rockwell. They did okay financially with their investment, and then divestiture of that investment in PTC. So it's a lot of software, but over time, some of the experiments didn't exactly work. And I notice we as editors and analysts and so on don't have the contact anymore with the senior executive level. I used to know, and they knew me, all the senior executives at Rockwell, and now I doubt that there's any senior executive outside of Blake, who's known me for years, that know who I am, and I wouldn't even recognize them if they would have come into the room. So that's some changes, and most of them now have come up through the ranks, and Rockwell is kind of, in a way, going back to, it's like a step up and then another step up of generating senior executives. And I'm just making an observation. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I just really respect when a CEO tries things and tries this, it tries to put some new thinking and some new blood into an organization, and then finds things that works and goes on. So yeah, it's like media coming to, it's not the same as it used to be. No big dinners and things there used to be. We don't have executive access we used to have, and so on. But the company has changed. We've changed. The whole market's changed. The whole media landscape has changed. I mean, I used to work for a magazine, and I haven't for 10 years now. Oh my goodness, 12 years now. And I'm much happier being on the internet only and not worrying about print, not worrying about advertisers that the magazine people have to do. And so I could tell by 2010 that print wasn't going to be quite as big, and they're still there. You can still find my old magazine and my old competitors' magazines. They're still there, but instead of 100 pages, now they're like 38 pages or something. And it's a shame. I'm not proud of that. It's just that's where the markets always go. In that kind of media business, and another thing is companies don't rely on people like us anymore to send them contacts, because they've built their own databases and they do their own blogs and their own writing, that sort of thing. And some of the company blogs are actually pretty good. Some of them are just self-serving marketing stuff, but sometimes you could go to a company blog and find out some really good things. Sometimes I go to company blogs, like Inductive Automations for that matter, and get really good technical background. So anyway, this wasn't about them, but Rockwell slowly but surely is becoming, software is embedded, software is necessary for a lot of things, but I noticed some time ago that Rockwell is no longer a platinum level sponsor of MESA, the MES Association. In fact, I've noticed all the big automation companies that bought MES companies, they're all now, they may still contribute a little bit of some people and so on, but they're not platinum sponsors anymore, premier sponsors. There was GE at the time, but GE split, and then GE Vernova has divested themselves of the old Intellution and Simplicity and Prophecy business, so they're not even kind of in there. And Rockwell doesn't seem to. This last time they didn't promote any of that level of software to the media, and when I wandered the show floor, I didn't see that much of that. Schneider Electric, kind of, there was the whole thing with Aviva and Aviva buying Invesis and Wonderware kind of going through, and that MES, and they've not been a sponsor for a long time of Mesa, and I'm using it as an example of the changes in the software business now. And Microsoft invests when they think that people use them as a platform, and when everybody used Microsoft as a platform, they stopped investing in a lot of things like that too. They'll send a person around. There's always a Microsoft executive quote unquote, of some sort around there. But a lot of stuff happening in that whole area. Meanwhile, inductive automation, so to go back and say, this is not a paid promotional announcement, but it's amazing. They built, I met Steve, the founder, kind of owner of the company, and he had a vision of how to build up. So the business was built from the ground up with the version, with the vision of doing pricing at a way that was more that made customers happier. But it was still, and the technology was built from the ground up to be IT friendly, and the latest version 8.3 is even more IT friendly, up with the latest things, using containers and MCP for AI agents and that sort of stuff. A lot of advances going on there, and they're really building that. And the larger companies, I think, had a lot of trouble. So when Rockwell needed to go into the cloud for a couple of things, they acquired a couple of cloud companies. Kind of the right thing to go. I just interviewed a couple of executives with another company, and it was kind of the same deal. The company needed to get into cloud for their engineering software, so they acquired a company that was built from the ground up for the cloud, and it's kind of the way to go. So a lot of stuff like that in software is shuffling around a little bit. Meanwhile, what I see with Rockwell is getting solider and solider, looking at their customers, the factory floors, and the software that it takes to connect higher up the channel, but it's expanding out more and more. So they acquired a mobile robot company and some other robotic stuff and some robotic software. And the senior vice president in charge of supply chain spoke to us and talked about how so the old software phrase used to be eating our own dog food. You built stuff with the stuff you built or whatever. And so they're calling it rock on rock. Rockwell, anyway. And they're using their own services and their own products to technically and organizationally reinvigorate their own manufacturing. I mean, Rockwell is a manufacturing company as well as selling to manufacturing companies. And they started with their Singapore factory, and he basically said, well, the reason why is because the team there said, hey, we need to upgrade and do things, and what do we have at Rockwell that we can use? And then they upgraded their Twinsburg, Ohio factory, and now they have announced a new facility that kind of warehouse manufacturing, big facility in southeast Wisconsin, and that will be the same way, using Rockwell products and services and people to get that in there. But that's the factory floor. So their mobile robot head, the guy who came with that company, is now the VP in charge of that, putting together a broader robotic portfolio, maybe not to compete with some of the SCARA and six-axis robots and so on in the old way, but kind of the new automation way of that sort of thing. So I talked about Rock on Rock, which was one of their things. They came up with, well, I should mention, I have before, they looked at all their cybersecurity portfolio and offerings and services and so on. And recently, and I wrote about it a couple of months ago, they've recently come together and sort of repackaged the whole thing and probably making it easier for a customer, for them to approach a customer to approach them, and put together a more complete cybersecurity offering. We talked about software-defined automation, and that was interesting. Write your software for your control platform and then target any platform, as well as Rockwell's. But of course, But it's a little bit of that. That's a modern trend of I don't have to write specifically to this controller and then rewrite for this controller and so on. I can write the control program, and then if my need changes, I can put a bigger controller in or whatever I need to do, and I'm not reconfiguring so many new things. This led to a question from my old friend and colleague Bill Leiden, who's with PLC Open these days. And PLC Open has IEC 61131 programming, and it's a whole thing. And I've forgotten. The Nirvana from 20 plus years ago was if you wrote a program using all the function blocks and all the technologies of IEC 61131, you should be able to write it and then target anybody's device. And if I decide I don't like Rockwell anymore and I want to bring in a Siemens device, I don't have to rewrite the program just to target a new device. There's a little bit of this going on with the open process automation people on the process side, and they're trying to do the same thing. Gets to be a lot of problems. Technically, I don't know. I haven't heard about it for a while. Bill asked him if this new software-defined automation would use IEC 61131 and target anybody's controller, and the room got quiet. And I'm thinking, well, of course, it's not going to do that. It's going to target any Rockwell device. And I don't see any vendor who wants to make it easier for a customer to switch out their control platform. So I don't know. So anyway, that's a good step for Rockwell. It's not going to hit the IEC 61131 Nirvana, but if you're a Rockwell customer, it's good. It's good for you. Or if you're going to switch, that's good for you. They have a vice president of AI, as a matter of fact, and he talked to us for a little while. And they're doing what I'm seeing is the optimum way to approach AI in our industry. You do three things. One is you're going to have AI. It's going to be I see it as a very useful automation tool. It'll automate so many tasks. If you're not using AI, you better start learning it. And is it going to take your job? Not necessarily, but it will if you don't learn how to use it and somebody comes along, because they'll become more productive. And so, but what you do is you embed it into workflows, you embed it into software development and so on, and make uses of its strengths as a tool. And if you're using the large language model, you train it on your own data. Don't train it on all the data there is in the universe, which is not going to be helpful. But if you train it on your own data, or the customer is able to train it on the customer's own data and standards and so on, now you've got a really useful tool that's functional, and it'll help you develop things like that. Talked a little bit about the robotics part of it, and that's interesting. And the way I see it as interesting is that it just expands Rockwell's reach more horizontally on the factory floor, and as factories are integrated with warehouses oftentimes these days, AMRs, autonomous mobile robots, I've been in factories where they're really useful bringing parts to the line when they need it, but also they're also often used in warehouses, and I'm seeing a lot of adaptations of AMRs for things like that too. So a lot of stuff going on. It's a little bit of talking about various things. So a little bit of touching on AI, a little bit of this. Where's the market at these days? The media market has changed a lot, and it keeps changing for me. I mean, people still read stuff like I read. I've got a few 100,000 monthly visitors, which is pretty good, and I appreciate every one of you and everybody that downloads these podcasts or YouTube videos. Thank you for your support, and I guess I have no other thoughts right now about all of this. Find it interesting that Rockwell tried really, really, really hard quite a few years ago to expand globally, and ran into roadblocks in various other geographies, say Asia and Europe. Still very, very strong in North America, which you would expect. So Rockwell was going on. Their next event is in Boston, and I'm thinking it'll be my 30th if I go, and I think 30 would be really great, but I have to pay my own way. I don't have a company behind me, so Boston's expensive. So maybe I'll see you in Boston. We'll see how that goes. And as a reminder, Today's podcast is sponsored by Inductive Automation, the makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data systems and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, and centralized control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global search and deep link launching. Providing additional support for Git, containers, and private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing, Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. Download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com. There are a lot of things to play with at inductiveautomation.com and Ignition and so on. Check it all out. So anyway, I'm recording this just before Christmas 2025, and so wish you all, if you celebrate Christmas, have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, or just enjoy the time off through the new year, and check back in with you later. Thank you. And take this time to be a little kind and a little generous.